Spain is still waiting for the end. Inside the Pardo Palace, 8 miles from Madrid, Francisco Franco, head of state, head of the army, the man who's dominated Spain for 36 years, still fights for his life. Outside, the people he's ruled have kept their vigil, for they know his death will change their lives. Francisco Franco's military career began in 1907 when he joined the Toledo Infantry Academy at the age of 14. This is the Paseo de la Castellana, one of the grand avenues that run through the heart of Madrid. And it was here at the end of the Civil War 36 years ago that Francisco Franco took the salute at a victory parade of 120,000 troops and tanks and guns, the like of which Madrid had never seen before. He took the salute and he told the crowd this: "I assure you that Spain will overcome all her difficulties. After what we have already gone through, nothing can make us suffer more." Well, was he right? In retrospect, was he right to be so optimistic? What have 36 years of Franco done for Spain and done to Spain? Director of Spain's largest travel group is Manuel Coronado.
I have a pleasant life. I spend most of what I earn. I have 5 children. They are all 5 getting an excellent education, better than the one I received, because times were more difficult. That was, many years ago. And we all have a pleasant life. We have a nice flat. I don't know how you rate flats in your country. Here we go by square meters, no? And I have one flat with many square meters. As I say, I live nicely, comfortably, without worries, because I happen to be in an industry that seems to have made it.
And made you prosperous too.
And that has made me slightly prosperous, and the country very prosperous.
You were born just before Franco came to power. What has he been to you?
Well, he has meant for me this stability, this almost unique sense of order and safety that that I don't find in most of the places where I go. For us here, it's become, we've become used to enjoying, because I have to use the right word for this, to enjoying this forever. And in this sense, it is hard to imagine that there may occur any change for the better.
Do you believe that Spain has paid any price for this stability?
Well, if I have to establish a balance, I think the gains from stability have been so great that it would be mean, for me at least, to start trying to establish the price for it. Everything naturally you have to always give in a bit to get something, but I think we have got so much thanks to the stability, at least in my line of business, that I can't think of our having paid any price for it. I think we have only stood to gain by it.
Have you ever been involved in politics?
Never.
This man, a communist, has spent nearly half the duration of Franco's regime in jail. How did the 36 years of Franco affect you personally?
It is not simple to sum it all up in a few sentences. For me, as well as for many Spaniards, the majority of Spaniards, dictatorship has imposed a hard time of suffering and calamity.
Una vida difícil, llena de sufrimientos.
Hunger, fear of being terrorized, imprisonment. In fact, for me, 15 years spent in jail and a great hardship all round.
Dificultades inmensas de todo tipo. no solamente haberos sido
By torture,
objeto
I mean insults,
de
threats, and
insultos,
pressures,
de amenazas, de presiones,
not only against me, but also against my family.
familia. Quiero decir, además de eso,
Being beaten up to the extreme of losing consciousness on several occasions.
físicamente, hasta quedar sin conocimiento.
My body, though not my spirit,
Quiero decir que la tortura ha dejado en
shows scars which, as traces of torture, I will carry to my grave.
señales físicas que morirán conmigo.
Eduardo Lopez comes from Bilbao and works in shipbuilding. He's a socialist and belongs to an illegal union. He's been in prison 9 times because of it.
What was your crime?
En este caso concreto y lo que vi
As far as I am concerned, I have had to suffer for the mere fact of belonging to a workers' union of socialist leanings.
la circunstancia que como yo hay otros cantidad de compañeros también que
There are many other people in the same circumstances, not only socialists, but other political persuasions too. Here, underground unions are persecuted, whilst in other countries, the same unions are perfectly acceptable and even encouraged.
During your adult life, what has Franco meant to you?
Well, I belong to a family who has lost the war. My father was shot, my grandmother was tortured, and most of my family have been in prison. And from my personal experience, I can tell that it's been quite unbearable because I've been arrested several times, put on trial, got a 5-year sentence, expelled from the university, got some fines, and can't get a job now. So what fascism means to me is quite unbearable, in fact.
What had you done? What were you accused of when you were sentenced to 5 years in prison?
An assembly meeting in the faculty.
Just a meeting?
Just a meeting.
Anna, for you, what has Franco meant? What has the regime meant?
Well, my experience is very different because I come from a right-wing family. So for me it's a more recent experience. I haven't had in my childhood, this wasn't present at all, but I find it very hard to define in British terms, if you want, what living under a dictatorship is, because well, you can talk about torture and prison and things like that, and people don't quite visualize what it is. I would like to mention small things that for me have no importance, but maybe for British people give an idea of what it is. For me, living under Franco is if the telephone or the door rings at 4 o'clock in the morning, well, I don't think it's a friend, I think it's the police. And I wonder, what am I going to do next? Every day is a risk, and you have to take it, or else you have to be untrue to your own beliefs.
Ruiz Jimenez is a devout Catholic. He was for 2 years Franco's Minister of Education. He resigned because he disagreed with the regime's policies. Politically, he's a Christian Democrat.
We have been more tolerated or less persecuted than have been socialists and especially communists. Nevertheless, all of us who have been in the democratical opposition have paid the same that we have not been able to express freely all we thought, that we have not been able to meet whenever we wanted, we have not been able to associate ourselves in political parties or in trade unions who were not the official trade union, and so that is a price we have paid.
But was Franco obsessively anti-communist? Was this his main driving force? Did he see communism in everything that he opposed?
Well, I think he had a certain proclivity to see, first, especially during the first time, the 21st years of his rule, he had a certain proclivity to see a Mason, you say Mason? Freemason, behind any political opponent. That was his first preoccupation. And second, communists. And third, what we call separatists.
But would ETA today be willing to accept something less than complete independence for the Basques?
Yes, of course. we must be political too. And the fact of accepting 1, 2, or 3 steps of the whole thing, you know, doesn't mean that we should be just satisfied with those 2, 3, or 4 steps. If, for example, we could get a sort of home rule, you know, in the just within the federal state, say, well, of course we should accept it.
I would say that I do not like to be called a member of the opposition. First, because there is no opposition, tolerated or not, officially, I mean. And second, because I am a man who wanted just to defend my views publicly, which were in some part agreeing with the views of the government, and in some part were not agreeing, were disagreeing. And that was something that was enormously difficult, because the regime was kind of used to a 100% approving or approval of all what they said, they did, they thought, or they acted. I thought that there was a tremendous mistake.
There will be change because there must be change. Yet to give too much political freedom will anger the right, and to give too little will frustrate the left and the centre. To preserve the balance between the two is the trickiest task facing Prince Juan Carlos when he takes over as head of state.
Do you fear that the left may not accept Juan Carlos as head of state?
I would say that the left is not enthusiastic either about Juan Carlos or about the monarchy, because the left is Republican at heart, has always been. But I would say also that when you say the left, we must make some analysis.
Well, the socialists seem particularly unkeen, if I can put it that way.
Yes, they are unkeen, but if they think that the monarchy would give them the way and the place in the legal framework of the future to fight their own fight and try to move the Spanish public opinion of the working class to have a big gathering and a big socialist party, they would accept monarchy, of course.
Do you believe that that's one of the first changes then, one of the first contrasts with the 36 years of Franco, that maybe we'll see a legalization of political parties?
I am convinced that that will take place. I mean, I am convinced that there will be some important changes in the structure of the constitutional law. I would say there is a reform that is necessary on the political structures, and that would comport popular vote, some kind of political parties, not many, and of course a parliament being elected.
When you say not many?
I mean, you are an Anglo-Saxon, if I may say so, but I am a Latin, and one thing that the Latin temperament gives always is that they, as long as you say political parties, there are 20 or 30 instantly, and there is no way of governing the modern democracy, and you know it, if you have 20 political parties.
If and when Juan Carlos becomes king, the Count of Monarchy could well be one of his leading ministers. Yet the extent of political freedom he envisages would not be sufficient for many of those in the centre and on the left. Would not be enough for Christian Democrat Ruiz Jimenez, for instance.
The Prince wants really to obtain a backing of the country. He must act very quickly forward towards democratic institutions, and he must not exclude any political force. Any political force.
Including communists?
Including the communists. I know that it is not easy to understand it on the mouth of a Christian Democrat, but I am sure that only if we also include in this democratical dynamism the Marxists and the communists, it will be possible to incorporate the working classes to the construction of a real democratic state.
Will the right-wingers, the phalangists, the hardliners accept this sort of change?
Well, I think as a whole, yes. They will accept the prince because they have no other possibilities in this moment.
And hope to influence him.
And try to influence and conditionate him. But that will be the great problem of the prince. A Hamletian problem, to be or not to be democratic. If he is democratic, he may establish in Spain the monarchy. If he's not democratic, the monarchy will crawl, and then the possibility of a republic will come again.
And the possibility of trouble between right and left, the possibility of a return to the civil war?
Well, I don't think, if the army is not split in two, I don't see the possibility of another civil war.
In the past year, 13 officers of the Spanish army have been arrested, accused of being too liberal. But that's a small proportion of the officer class, and no one expects the Spanish army to adopt the kind of role the Portuguese army played in their revolution 18 months ago.
The army will play a very important role, a very important role. We would like that the army doesn't play a role in the sense of an active protagonism as in Portugal. We would like that the army maintains as a kind of arbiter, a referee, cares that the left wing and the right wing, the most extremist right and left, doesn't push Spain again in a civil war.
We are not going to fall into the tremendous mistakes that have been made in Portugal, bringing the country to a chaos through the politicization of the military, which is the biggest mistake that can be made in a modern state, as I see it.
And you believe that the army will support Juan Carlos?
Absolutely.
No doubts?
No doubts.
Do you believe that the change will be peaceful in Spain?
It will not be easy. I don't know if by peaceful you mean that will not be tension, that will not be agitation. I don't think it will be peaceful in that sense. But I hope it could be peaceful in the sense that no bloodshed takes place.
How confident are you today that the change will be peaceful?
I am absolutely confident, because I know that today the most important thing in Spain is the change of the mood and the responsibility of the people. And if you leave on one side the fractions of extreme minorities of violence, which are, after all, a disease that is world over, as you know, we have a tremendous majority of the Spanish country who doesn't want violence and doesn't want any kind of violent rupture, but wants evolution and a kind of a peaceful change.
Perhaps the most significant sign of the widespread belief that Franco's era is over is the willingness of this communist to show his face to the camera. Why should he take the risk?
Because I'm not here to commit any crimes, but to answer certain questions about my opinions. And I think this is a basic democratic right. I also feel that Spain is heading inevitably for democracy.
Do you believe there will be a peaceful change from Franco to Prince Juan Carlos?
I'm totally convinced that will be the case. The transition from Franco to Juan Carlos will be a peaceful one.
So the time has come to begin to answer the question, what will happen to Spain after Franco? And what chance has Spain of avoiding the violence that has soured the ending of another dictatorship in neighbouring Portugal? Well, today in Madrid, the chances seem to be good. To most Spaniards, the lessons or the memories of the Spanish Civil War are still very real. Spain will wait to find out what Juan Carlos intends to do. There'll be a honeymoon period, but no one knows how long that honeymoon will last. And at the end of it, Juan Carlos and his advisors will have to have come up with answers to some of the most difficult questions facing any head of state in Europe today. As for Francisco Franco, when he dies, he'll probably be buried 30 miles from Madrid in the Valley of the Fallen, beside a monument he built to the heroes of both sides in the Spanish Civil War. Soon, Franco will join the past. Then, at last, Spain will face the future.